Okay, I'm going to call this village board meeting for October 21st to order. Roll call, please.
Joe Zisselberger.
Here.
Aaron, Kristen Runge.
Here.
Bill Rana.
Here.
Chris Elmer.
Here.
Bill Willems.
Here.
Aaron Moran.
Here.
Bree Hurst.
Here.
Okay, first thing we would normally have is postings,
Oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to put that
so
on.
I will give that to you to verify.
Yep, I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Wanacue Tribune on the 17th. The final agenda was posted on October 17th at all three village posting locations, and the final agenda and meeting packet was made available on that same day.
Okay. Thank you. Then we have consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled, or I'd look for a motion?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Fulham, second by Kristen Runge. Any comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comment. Is there anyone here that'd like to address the board on an issue that's not on the agenda for this evening?
I don't have any.
Anybody? Do you have a piece of paper that you want to talk?
No, well, on something that's on the agenda.
Okay, so
Let's wait then.
we'll wait on that one then, okay? Okay,
I do have one item before we get off public comment.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to make aware to the village board that our deadline to file an initial short-term rental licensing application was October 15th, so last Tuesday, the village received no applications.
okay, thank you. I will say that I had a wonderful time at Boo Bash the other day. Lots and lots of kids coming through our business community, and Todd had a great Scooby-Doo costume on, and did a really nice job. So I'll commend our business community down here for doing a great job. All right, next under new business, discuss and take action on resolution supporting the use of F-35A fighter airplanes at Truax Field, Air National Guard Base in Madison, Wisconsin. So this was my agenda item that I put forth to all of you. And where this all started was actually quite some time ago. We had some pilots that live in the community, and they had asked if we could support this. It was about a year and a half, 2 years ago already, where they were starting to ask. And we went through, they've been going through hearings processes. We had a presentation at the Village Center through our Chamber of Commerce. Or was that Village Center or Library? One of those two. Sue, Village Center? Village Center. It was at the Village Center, where a presentation was given for the community to come and attend, the business community. And I just felt that it was something that was worth putting in front of you. Oh, fire person in the crowd. Okay. Like, wow. So once when we had that meeting, and we had the gentleman ask us if we could look at doing something like this. Sun Prairie has done this. DeForest has put something forward through as well. I thought it was worth our time to look at it and give you the opportunity to consider, and a resolution was drawn up for us to consider. And there are some people here that may want to address us in regards to this. Some things that I found out that were interesting as we were going through this, and why Wisconsin, the federal government's really gonna make this decision, ultimately. But one of the things that stuck out to me was Wisconsin, and why they're looking at Wisconsin. There's 5 different key points that they look at for the location. And Wisconsin meets all 5 of the criteria, and we're one of the only spots in the country that has that, whether it be terrain, water, different temperature that they have to deal with. They look at those 5 criteria, and we fit that. And that's why we're such a great site for this. It's a huge tax savings to people, because to fuel and run these planes and operate them is very expensive. And if they weren't, because of where Truax is located to this area, which is in the center of our state, they can get there very quickly without having to use as much fuel and time. So you can imagine that's quite a huge savings. Other locations wouldn't have that ability, where they'd have to go much further to get to a location. So it just makes sense. That's why I'm supporting it. That doesn't mean all of you are going to support it. But I wanted to throw it in front of you. And then there are people here that may be able to answer some questions. I know Roger Erickson's here. He spoke at the Village Center. So comments, questions?
You know, I've been contacted by a number of the people who fly or work, and I guess I've always supported the troops, and, I feel real positive. I think it's an economic impact for Dane County, and our community, so I'm in full support.
And I would say I read up on this a little bit, and it's amazing how strategic our location is from a protection standpoint and from a deployable standpoint for these people. So I would support it from that standpoint.
I support it, but Roger, I'd ask you to, since I don't see it in here, talk a little bit about the role that the fighter wings play in fire protection at the airport and some of the services that they provide that taxpayers do not directly cover through our property taxes.
Be happy to. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit unknown fact that the 115th provides fire protection for Dane County Regional Airport. And so the cost that is borne by the county or even by the state is a very small piece, because you've got the fire protection that the 115th provides, plus other disaster relief services that the wing also provides too. It's a major contributor to the safety for the airport in general.
Yeah.
So when you're referring to disasters, you're talking about tornadoes to flooding to
Tornadoes,
anything?
Flooding, again, it's one of those unknown things, is that one of the benefits of the National Guard is, besides one major role of protecting the country, is also assisting in disasters that happen in the United States or in Wisconsin in general. So whenever there's been a major flood, the Guard has been out there assisting, whether it's flood, tornadoes. Actually, the 115th was even able to deploy down in San Juan when the hurricane hit down there, and they were able to bring back up the flights to San Juan Airport from 2 flights a day to over 200 flights a day within about a 72-hour period. So it's a major benefit, a major contributor to our recovery efforts, and it's wonderful that we have the base located here.
Thank you.
Sir, could you just introduce yourself, your name, address, and capacity?
My name is Roger Erickson. My address is 2315 Springdale Center Road, Verona. You want my capacity?
With the fighter wing?
I'm an honorary commander for the 115th.
Okay, just for the minutes.
Yes.
Joe, any comments, questions?
No, I'm good with this. I'm supportive. The only concern that I would have is not having a real good feel about the community in general and what the opinions are. I get the feeling that it's probably pretty positive, but there's kind of a hole that I don't know about.
Okay. Bill?
Full support.
Aaron?
I agree with most of the comments I've made, and I know this is a bigger issue than just Wanakee, but I think our role, especially with some of our residents and stuff, could support.
Okay, so if we have support, do we need to read this, Todd, or do we just make the motion to?
You can read it if you care to, but it's not required.
Before that, I'd make a motion, we approve the resolution supporting the F-35A fighter airplanes at the Truex Field.
Okay, motion by Phil Willems. Second by Bill Random. Any other comments? Okay, then I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Roger, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Bart is also here, so thank you. Okay. Second, we've got discuss and take action on proposed amendment to the Wanakee Code of Ordinances relating to the creation of section 3085 concerning fire inspections.
Great, the village received a request from the Wanakee Area Fire District to amend our village code to allow for a reduction in the number of inspections from 2 per year to 1 per year. Included in your packet was some of that information. Brian Adler, the fire inspector, is here to answer any questions of the village. The draft ordinance, or the ordinance that is proposed tonight was drafted by the village attorney. I believe you requested this of all jurisdictions in the fire district?
That is correct.
Correct. So this would just allow them to formally go down from 2 inspections a year to 1 inspection. So Brian's here for any questions.
Board members, questions for Brian? He's dressed up.
Doesn't he have to stand in front of the
We
podium?
have to make sure we give him an opportunity to recognize him, and you
Doesn't
probably
he
should
have to
stand up
stand
for the
there,
camera
right
and.
there? Turn to the camera,
within
please.
it.
You haven't seen me before.
It's easier now.
Anybody?
You know, reading through it, it seems to make sense. I just
Yeah.
want to get to more places, and I think it makes sense to do this. It's pretty logical.
Well, this came before the fire committee and everybody was in favor of it, so I'd make a motion, we approve the resolution to amend the Wanakee Code of Ordinances relating to the creation of section 30-85 concerning to fire inspections.
Okay, motion by Phil Willems,
I'll second that
second by Bill Ranum. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Next, we have discuss and take action to place on file proposed 2020 operating and capital improvement budget. Renee, spotlight.
Okay. So in your packet were a lot of materials, the detailed budget, the detailed capital improvement plan, the policies, all of that. So, you know, you're welcome to ask questions over any of that. I'm gonna start with this presentation piece, which kind of summarizes a lot of that. And we'll just go from there. So, just a reminder again on how our budget process works and how it's worked for this year. Back in June, the departments started assembling their departmental budgets, which they turned in to me in July. And then I assembled all of that along with a lot of other budget pieces that aren't department-specific. And Todd and I met a couple different times and went through some of that to see where things were at. We met with Chris, and prior to this meeting, the Finance Committee convened, and we went through these same slides and the same budget. And the Finance Committee reviewed the budget policies that are proposed, which aren't really very much different at all from what has been our policies in the past. Tonight, we're going through this presentation, and then we have two future opportunities for public comments. There's a voluntary public hearing that is scheduled for November 4th, where citizens can come in and discuss the budget. And then we have a required public hearing, which will be November 18th. That is just prior to when the board considers the final budget approval. So that's where we are in the process. As is very typical, there's a few key unknowns at this point. The manufacturing assessment is done by the state and not our local assessor. And we don't get that usually until the first week of November. And so I've put in some estimates in my calculations and tried to be fairly conservative because the manufacturing assessment has been pretty volatile the past few years. Last year, we did have an increase, but the year before that, we actually had a decrease. So I think there's still working to try and be consistent across municipalities, and so we don't exactly know what to expect there. But again, with the conservative estimate I have in there, hopefully it will only help us in terms of our tax rate once those final numbers come through. And I'm not sure if we'll know that by the November 4th meeting, but if we do, I'll let you know that. Otherwise, for sure, we'll know it by the November 18th meeting. We also don't know what any of the other taxing jurisdictions are gonna do. So the breakdown you see here is actually last year's tax bill breakdown. And I expect that'll be pretty similar in terms of the percentages once everybody's final numbers come through. But we can only focus on our own village tax piece at this point. Some other significant items to note. Our equalized value grew about 10%. which is very strong. Last year, we grew about 9%. And just a reminder, the equalized value is meant to simulate the market value, and so that helps with comparing different municipalities to each other, so that they're equalized, they're on the same playing field, versus the assessed rate can be all over the board depending on if they've just had a revaluation or where they are at in their assessment process. When our equalized value goes up, our debt capacity also goes up. And so we'll see later when we talk about some of the debt things, this helps our debt capacity grow. The state limits us in the statutes to increase our levy by the net new construction of the village. And this year we were just at over 4% of an increase, or our net new construction was just over 4%. So that's another positive thing. It's pretty close to where we were last year in terms of our growth. Some significant items, this is particular to the general fund, which is our main operating fund of the village. You may recall from the 2019 budget, we budgeted for a few new hires, specifically in the police department and then in the library, more so for maintenance of the library and some of the cleaning staff and such. So in 2020, we will have a full year impact of those mid-year hires from this year. That's about $126,000. EMS and fire, the yellow highlights is to indicate how much the village's share increased. But the other numbers, so EMS, the total assessment for all municipalities is just over $429,000, which was up about $49,000 over the prior year, which was about a 13% increase. The village's increase was closer to $38,000, or a 16% increase. And that's, our increase is higher than the average because our share of the EMS district, which is based on population, went up from 63%. Now we're responsible for 65% of that assessment. And EMS was here at the last meeting, and they kind of talked about their initiatives and what kind of led to this increase. On the fire side, the total assessment is $841,000, and that's up close to $200,000 over last year. And our share of that is about $150,000. And what they're trying to do, starting in their 2020 budget, is build up some sinking funds for when they need to replace large equipment. And so in particular, the first piece of equipment they're expecting to replace is Engine 2. And so they're hoping to build up these sinking funds over the next couple of years so that when they do purchase it, they won't have to borrow as much. And they'll have some funds on hand for that. So the village's share of the fire district is about 72% now, and that is based on our equalized value. You know, it's positive that our equalized value went up, but it also went up more than the other municipalities, so now we have a larger share of the fire fees. Library operations, as predicted, we knew 2020 would be the first full year that the library would be open, and that there would be some extra costs related to that. These are non-wage related costs, about $52,000 for the utilities and just operating the building, supplies of a larger scale building. So that also increases the general fund. And then our health and dental insurance, we heard about this at the last meeting as well. We were able to achieve overall a 5.63% increase in our health. Between the premiums, we held the HSA contribution steady. But that does add about $76,000 to our general fund budget for those insurance programs. So the total additions here are about 442,000 into the general fund. Diving a little bit more into some of the personnel costs, the staffing accounts for 61% of the general fund budget, because that's where most of the employees are paid out of, the general fund. And just our grand total budget in general, staffing is still about 36% of all of our funds combined. So it's a very large piece of our budget. This budget that we are proposing proposes a cost of living adjustment of 2.5%, which would go into effect on January 1st, 2020. This is in line with the union contract at the same time frame. The union contract was adopted for 2 years, so it goes through the end of 2020, and then we will have to negotiate again for that. But this includes those union employees. So our overall increase for staff at that 2.5% COLA is 96,000. If we went up or down 0.5%, that would change the levy by up or down about 20,000 or so, if we change that rate. Some things that we can't change because they're part of our compensation strategy, if somebody moves up a step, that type of thing, those step adjustments account for about 57,000 addition to the budget for 2020. Other, on the benefit side, so earlier I spoke about the general fund share of the increase for health and dental. For everyone together, it's about 142,000. And then Wisconsin retirement is going up. A fairly significant impact on the village. The contribution rate is going from 6.55% to 6.75%, and that's going to add about 54,000 to the village's budget. Just a reminder on some of our pay-as-you-go funds and where they're sitting at in the budget. So the pay-as-you-go are amounts that are levied for. We're also, I have a note here, we're hoping to add 1.1 million to the streets budget, which would be funded by debt. So streets would be a combination of the pay-as-you-go and debt funding to get up to a $2 million allocation to work on our streets. The other pay-as-you-go funds are staying the same as they were last year. Just to go through some of our debt service policies and kind of how they fit in with the budget plan here. So our policy is to remain below 50% of the state imposed limit on borrowings, which is 5% of our equalized value. And so at the end of 2019, we will be at 35.17%. And last year at this time, or I should say at the end of 2018, we were at 41.94%. So our strong equalized value growth has helped bring that down. In addition to some of our older debts have started to fall off. The ones from back in 2008, 2009, those have been paid off. Another policy that we have is to remain below 30% of the total village expenditures, and we will be at 18.14% with this current 2020 budget. And our equalized tax rate is to remain below $2.25 per thousand, and with this budget, we would be at $1.39. Questions on
Board members, any questions at this point?
this before we keep plugging through? Okay. So next, just talking about some of our strategic uses of fund balance. First, a reminder of what our policy is over fund balance. We are to remain maintain a general fund unassigned fund balance between 20 and 25% of the subsequent year's operating expenditure budget. That's a big mouthful, but in recent years, you'll see where we've landed. We've been in the low 30%, and we've been trying different strategies to spend that down, and we're continuing that in the next budget as well. So some things that we're doing to use fund balance is we're continuing as some of our pay-as-you-go enhancements that we started about 2 years ago. So $165,000 will be going toward capital pay-as-you-go funds, and $78,000 will be going towards some equipment replacement pay-as-you-go. So again, we're supplementing the levy piece with some use of fund balance because of our excess. We also plan to use some of the carryovers that we've been accumulating. So we've had a balance of $400,000 for future retirees to fund their HRA payouts as they start to retire. And so we're planning to use some of that in 2020, about $50,000, because we have some significant retirements happening. And had some significant ones in 2019 as well. Also, because 2020 is a presidential election year, we're planning to use some of the election carryover that we've been building up, so essentially we levy less because we are able to use some of what we've been building up over the past 3 years towards that. We also look through the general fund for some one-time costs, because again, you typically only want to use fund balance for things that are considered one-time, not for operational purposes, because eventually, if you use it for operations, it would be used up and then you'd be stuck without a funding source. So we try and look toward one-time costs. So a few things that met that criteria. Some of the strategic planning that the board is planning to do in 2020. They've got the Fly Dane is a thing that only happens every few years. We have some planned work at the depot, which is also known as Reeve Park, and just some other minor costs in there that we consider to be one time that we felt comfortable using fund balance for. We also, because again, it was planned, but the library operational costs are going up, and so we decided to try and ease that in over a 2-year period with some use of fund balance. So all told, we're planning to use about $435,000 of our accumulated fund balance in the 2020 budget. That being said, at the end of 2020, we're still projecting a fairly high unassigned fund balance. Could be as much as 39%. Part of that is the downtown TIF 5, is starting in 2019. They started to make significant payments on what they owe to the general fund. The general fund had fronted them some costs back a number of years ago, and that TIF district was struggling for a few years. And now that they're starting to pay the general fund back, that goes directly into our unassigned fund balance. The board will begin to look at ways to use up some of this fund balance and get closer to our policy, either one-time costs or reducing some of our future borrowings, picking different projects it might want to assign some of the fund balance towards. So that's something we'll have to work on to bring that back in line. Questions on that?
Board members, any questions at this point? Bill? Perfect, okay.
Another part of the budget where we use some accumulated fund balance is on our village center debt. So we collect impact fees for the village center. and they can only be used to pay down the village center part of the debt. We've had very strong collections, and so we developed this strategy a couple years ago, and it gets tweaked every year, but we're using some of those to help offset the levy, because again, those funds can only be used towards debt service. And this strategy shows that it's predicted that we will use those accumulated impact fees by the year 2025, which is the final year of the debt. But we will continue to collect the impact fees, because the column in the green is what the general fund and tax levy has had to contribute toward this debt. So we can keep collecting the impact fees until we have repaid what the tax levy has had to supplement. So it could go on for a number of years past when the debt is paid off. Next, going through some key budgetary outcomes in terms of the tax rate and the tax bills and that type of thing. Again, this is the village share, but our tax rate, both the assessed and the equalized tax rates, are decreasing. You'll see now that they're much closer to each other. Last year, the equalized was going down, but the assessed was going up. But now we did the interim market update and brought the assessed values up, and so that they're closer to what the equalized values are. So in both cases, our 5-year average is still a decrease to the tax rate. The next slide, very hard to see from a distance, but we've shown this the past couple of years. The darker gray highlight is where Waunakee falls in the Dane County area, the Dane County cities and villages, in terms of where we rank in our equalized tax rate. So we're still, these past 3 years, we've been down in the lower third in terms of what our tax rate is here. So that's just some more information. In terms of the projected results for the general fund for 2019, I'm estimating a decrease in fund balance of about $243,000, which doesn't sound great at first, but in our 2019 budget, we'd actually budgeted for a decrease of $620,000. So we're actually close to $400,000 better than what we had planned for in our budget. That primarily is due to revenues being over budget. We budget very conservatively on the revenue side. For example, the credit card rebate that we get from village employees' use of the credit card, we don't budget anything for that because it's not predictable. So we'll see at least $20,000 there. There's some state aids that we're not sure if we're going to get or not get at the time when we create the budget. So we're getting, $41,000 in aids that hadn't been budgeted. And then some of these other categories, building permits, investment income, donations, we budget very conservatively. Budget or building permits, we can't predict those with certainty if, the market would turn. We don't want to have, under collected for those, so we budget conservatively. Same with investment income, and donations are very unpredictable, so we see a lot of good results there. In terms of the expenditures, the reason we're showing some excess expenditures is when we budgeted in 2019 for the interim market study or revaluation type work, we knew we were going to use our assessor carryover that we'd been building up for that purpose, and so we actually didn't put the full amount in the budget. So now it looks like it's an overage, but it was a planned overage because we planned to use that carryover money. Moving on to the general fund expenditures, So those are going up about 477,000. But if you remember from the slide before, the slide that showed the EMS that we needed to absorb, the fire, library, health costs, step increases, all of that, that was about 442,000. So that makes it the majority of why the general fund is going up, are some of those costs that we have less control over. But we're still under our 5-year average at about 5%. The levy accordingly is going up due to those expenditures going up. In this case, it's higher than our 5-year average, but most of that is due to, part of why it's going up is last year we had used some fund balance for things like the Rip Park tennis courts. And so now we're not using as much fund balance, so we have to levy a little bit more to make up some of those costs. We are still under our levy limit. The total that we could levy for, because you're able to add back if you have debt service, we don't use our full add back amount, so we actually have a cushion of about 1.7 million that we technically could levy for. But obviously that would be a very high amount to add to our current tax rate. So we try and, we mention the cushion, but we hope we would never have to use any of that. So this slide is intended to get at what is the impact on the taxes themselves for the average home. After the interim market update, the average increase in values was 22.5%. Not everybody, some were higher, some were lower, but the average was 22.5%. So that brings our average village home value now to $367,734. So that's kind of like the third line down. And that's the one I'm going to key into here. So that's our new average village home value. And so the projected taxes would be $2,181. So that same home, again, on average.
Village portion of the taxes.
Oh, did I say it wrong?
No, you just said taxes. I want to be clear that it's
the
the village
portion of the taxes. So that same home, assuming they were the average, would have last year been worth $300,188, and their tax bill last year would have been $2,097. So that would be an $84 increase for that particular average village home. The other numbers are kind of in there, so you can do your own math if your home is higher or lower than the average. But the increase is consistent, obviously, between all the categories on a percentage basis.
So a little extra commentary on this slide. I can appreciate the confusion that comes with revaluation. It's always a confusing year for property owners. And when people saw on average the 22% increase, I also don't fault anyone for jumping to the conclusion that that might have a direct impact on the bottom line of their tax bill. I get that. But what we said at the time of the revaluation was that there would be a notable decrease in the tax rate that would work to sort of even out the impact. And as you look at this scenario here, that $84 on that average home, that increase, in only talking about the village portion of the tax bill is 4%, is a 4%, call it a bottom line increase for just the village portion. Now, keep that in mind when you consider the entirety of the tax bill, with our bill only being 29%. Not knowing what the other jurisdictions are doing yet, but percentage-wise on the impact on the entire bill, you're, down to a portion of 1% or something along those lines. So I just wanted to point that out because that was a concern of many in the community. I heard that, some of you did too. And this sort of lays out the reality of that scenario.
Thanks, Todd. So to talk a little bit more about the assessment ratio, which is the ratio of the assessed value to the equalized value, this is kind of the history of where we are and where we were since the last full revaluation. So that was 2012, and we were up at 102% of our, as our assessment ratio. So that kind of steadily went down until we got to the point where we dropped below the state's threshold of maintaining our assessment ratio at 90%, and that was when we entered into the interim market update this year. So, am I saying that right?
Yes,
Caitlin? Okay. So in 2019, after this interim market update, we're at about 95% assessment ratio. Again, we don't have the manufacturing, but that's a smaller chunk of the whole pie, so I don't think that'll fluctuate too much from the 95%. But just to note, last year when we talked about the interim market update, we were hoping to be closer to 100% again, like we were after, or even higher, after the last full valuation. So we did ask our assessor about that, because obviously we still paid a considerable amount of money for the interim market update, not as much as maybe a full reval would have been, but he and other assessors in the area, I think they'd gotten this question before, but they felt that the state was very aggressive in the Dane County area when they set the equalized value. And so it is their hope that when the state does the equalized value next year, they will look at our actual data, our sales, and what this interim market update came up with, and that they'll hopefully kind of level that off a little bit. And so hopefully we may even be higher than 95% next year. Again, this is all the assessor's predictions. We have no way of knowing whether that's gonna come about. But anyway, but we did want to know, well, why didn't we get where we thought we would be at that time? Next, we're going to have some audience participation and participation from up here with the departmental slides.
Renee, hold on one sec.
Yep.
Do you guys have any questions for Renee before our department heads go in, or comments in regards to what's been proposed? I would just comment that when we looked at the increases, the 23, 46, 84, and $115 based on the home values, that's roughly the average for home, which was $367. It's a $7 a month increase for our portion. And if you do some figuring on what our salaries, our expenses are for our staff, the increases, that doesn't cover that portion. And so it shows you where the value of our village growing really helps to keep our taxes down to a certain degree. So.
And maybe before we jump into the departments, kind of a challenge to you as board members. Certainly Renee and I have had the chance to meet several times with Chris in preparation of the budget, but we really haven't had a chance to ask any of you about your priorities, besides things we've talked about over the course of the board's business for the past year. So I think as you're listening to the department heads, as well as having looked at your nice thick packet, my question for you maybe before we end tonight will be, what are priorities of yours that you hope are or could be addressed within the 2020 budget? We may have the answer to that. We may be accomplishing it, and if we're not, those are things we can look at as we continue to refine our budget proposal over the next couple of board meetings.
Now on to departments.
Oh, Caitlin and I get to go first.
Yes. We're gonna cover bullet point one.
Sure, go ahead.
So the village utilizes a software through Neoga, which provides different types of technology solutions for local municipality or for local governments. And we use them for our annual performance evaluation software. We were notified that there's a software increase for next year of 5%. So that's reflected in the updated administration HR budget. In 2020, we are reviewing this software to make sure it's still fitting our needs and maybe looking for different solutions. So look for the 2021 budget for that proposal.
And we're continuing to do, I guess, what I would say, little things that make a big difference when it comes to working with our staff. Everything from maybe once a month doing something special for a particular department. Rip Your Floats at the Public Works Department a couple months ago. Logo shirt purchases for some staff and other employee engagement. Pumpkin carving contest with a pizza party for the winning department. Again, little things, but what I've observed, and you've been here longer, Kevin, so you could, toss your 2 cents in, but we've got an organization that I think has become aware of one another more than in the past. I think departments caring for departments beyond their own 4 walls. So we're going to continue that work through our HR function. And then with our new staffer, Kylie West, in the administration and clerk department, we are including some training so she can enjoy some professional development opportunities. Those are the main differences, changes in our department.
Questions on that department? On to the clerks.
So in the clerk's department for the 2020 budget, we are proposing to add some social media archiving services. There's a number of writers out there that do this. We're working together with a company called Smarsh. They specialize in, so when we say social media archiving, it means we link our social media accounts so we can get up to 10 accounts through them that are linked, and they just archive what we're posting, what people are commenting. Even if staff goes on and changes a post, it archives when it was changed. So it helps our records retention of our social media, which is something local governments, I think, are grappling with, and something that we want to stay ahead of. So we would link our various Facebook and Twitter pages to this service to just increase our archiving. The election budget is increased to reflect the 4 anticipated elections in 2020. We are in a presidential election year next year. So we will likely have we don't know if we're going to have a February election, but there could be a February election. We'll for sure have an April, August, and November election next year. The assessor's budget was increased for the new contract rate with Associated Appraisal. In 2018, the village board approved a new contract with Associated for years 2019 to 2023. So the budget was increased to reflect that new contractual cost. And then some increases in our budget for Village Hall was updated for in-house cleaning services being performed by our maintenance staff. We previously contracted out for those services, and we've since brought them in-house. Any questions for my clerk budget? Thank you.
Okay. Next, Sue with Community Services.
For sure. So there aren't any significant changes in the community services budget this year, but I wanted to highlight some of the things that we're going to be focusing on in 2020. First item on this list, we want to continue to expand the programming that we offer throughout the village. Clearly, the majority of our programming happens either in the village center, in the school gyms, or in Village Park and Centennial Park, but we really want to work hard to bring the fun things that we have to offer to all of the parks throughout the village. So we're going to have a focus on that idea. We want to continue to that sentence doesn't make sense, does it? We want to continue to offer our increased programming to adult participants. So it is one of the goals of our department to offer recreation, health, and fitness programming to the whole village. And so adults is a market that we want to continue to find good things for people to participate in. We're going to continue with our multi-year fitness equipment replacement program. So our fitness center, we want to make sure that all of the equipment that we have to offer to our members is up to date. good working order, ready for people to use. And then probably one of the largest projects we're going to be working on is this conversation about a community aquatics facility.
Questions for Sue?
Any questions? Thanks, Sue.
Back to Todd.
Economic Department, the street pole banners that are now taken down and have felt the age of the weather over the past few years are gonna be replaced. We'll be looking at a similar design, maybe tweaking the phrases that we use on the banners, but you'll see fresh new pole banners in the spring. Along with aging signs, the business park entry signs are fading, and so we're gonna be giving them a little bit of a facelift. We're gonna be kicking off Create Wanakee, as we've spent time this year working on establishing that, well, I guess you could call it the firm brand for our pursuit of our creative economy initiative. That with the brand creation and then a Facebook and a new website devoted to that now being created, we're gonna roll that out with some activities and events and marketing efforts to continue awareness of Create Wanakee. And then finally, I have $15,000 proposed in the budget for completing a study for renovations to Reeve Park. That's the grounds surrounding the Chamber Depot. If you've been around that recently, you've seen a project that has seen its age with some commemorative bricks that have sunk in patches and other areas of the depot grounds that just really aren't very used. And sort of what I'm imagining in discussing this with folks from the depot and the Parks Department is a space that we could convert that will be more of a usable plaza, per se, a gathering place for the community, which we don't necessarily have out of doors along that portion of Main Street. So we're gonna begin the planning for that project.
Questions for Todd? I have one. Several citizens have asked about the banners and when we have our flags up and if it's appropriate for having those banners above the flags.
Yes, it is. We researched that back when we did the lights and met with Legion and that. And as long as the flag is to the right, I believe it is, of the banners, we're okay with them the way they are.
What was the raise we put in for Bill Frederick? I'd like to,
Big debate.
is there, do we have capacity?
That's why I'm asking. I've had people
The
ask
answer
me
is
that.
right there.
Yeah.
So, Bill, thank you for the answer, and Roberta, if you can make sure, or about that one, so.
Direct quote.
I'll send emails back, but,
That was awesome.
All right, perfect.
it was Bill Fred, okay.
R-E.
With that. Okay, thanks, Todd.
Okay. Engineering, Kevin.
Just as a recap, this was the first year we really concentrated on resurfacing projects rather than reconstruction projects. And we spent about $1 million on resurfacing projects. We got really good feedback from those projects that were done. We get about 4 times as much roadway improvements with those types of projects compared to a reconstruction project. We expect those roadways to be extended 15 to 20 years in terms of life expectancy of those projects. Bill and his team has come up with about $8 million worth of projects, and so there's $2 million a year over the next number of years will really make a dent in those types of projects. Tomorrow night, we got our Public Works Committee meeting. We'll be tuning in on what those projects consist of for 2020. We are gonna spend some time on Woodland Drive humps. Next year, there's probably 10 to 12 humps that are out there. We have a method we're gonna try yet this fall on 4 of them. We'll see how it works. We'll include it in the budget to see in our bidding so we get good contractors to work on that. And then we got some miscellaneous sidewalk improvements that we do every year and a couple other minor operating funding requests that Renee put in, is included as highlights.
Comments, questions for Kevin? The Woodland Drive humps, which has been a debate. Are we paying for those? Is Westport paying for those, or is it a joint?
It's a joint. Well, it's proposed to be a joint. We'll spend some more time on it tomorrow. And we'll spend some more time, I guess, in the next budget year and probably the bidding and see what we include and see how they handle the freestyle over the winter, if it works.
Is that the same phenomenon that we see on 113?
It is,
Golf
certainly
course.
those are more numerous. We've seen an increase in other parts of the state where it was a state project and they used this recycled concrete and I think there's an effect with the cement and the water getting in by the cement and causing these humps. We haven't seen it in any of our projects that we've done on our own, but that was a DOT project and they've seen that in other DOT-led projects.
Okay.
Kevin, you mentioned 113. Is there any plan at the state level to address 113 North or?
Yeah, I don't remember the year that it's in, but those, both projects are, in fact, 113 going into, towards Northport Drive into Madison and then the one going north. Those have both been identified by DOT for improvements.
Has there been any discussion of a stoplight at Arboretum and 113?
Yeah, the discussion has been that the DOT will not fund it. They don't think it's warranted. They don't think it's needed. But if we wanted to pursue some improvements, some geometry changes to that road project, which would include probably a dedicated right turn lane, which would include the efficiency and probably the safety of that intersection. There's some grant funding that recently became available. So we're gonna work jointly with the town of Westport and go after some of that funding. It's about a $500,000 improvement project.
Okay.
Anyone else?
It says bring our annual total to 2 million. What's our total right now for the annual?
You know, it's really hard to predict, but I think the last we were in excess of, $20 million. But as I found out when I budget these, they've really gone up in price compared to what our probably cost of oil, cost of construction. So 20 million is probably a rough number to use. We probably get more detailed. As an example, for this year's project, I had it at about probably 1.9 million. As we zone in on those projects, we're probably closer to like 2.1, which is actually, it's probably a little bit higher than inflation, but I think construction has seen a somewhat of a higher increase than generally across the board inflation.
Okay. Thank you.
Then next is the finance department. So you may recall in the 2019 budget, and we did this earlier this year, we had Ellers help us with capital planning over a 10-year period and some financing projections and that type of thing. So in 2020, we're hoping to do the next phase of that financial management planning project to include some operating projections so we can see a better picture of the tax impacts between the capital and the operating together and what that would mean for the taxpayer. So that is budgeted in 2020. We were able to decrease one line item on our budget. In 2019, we upgraded our accounting software, and so obviously that's working well. We don't need to budget for that again. And then we did go through an RFP process this spring and summer for our audit services, and we were able to have just a very modest $400 increase to our audit for 2020. So that I think was a successful process there. Questions on that?
Any questions? Thanks, Renee.
Was library.
It is very nice to be here and not ask for additional staff for the first time in several years. Thank you to this board for the support over the last few years. I hope that the feedback that you've gotten over the first 2.5 months in the new building has been as good as we had hoped. We are not asking for any additional staff next year. As Renee alluded to, however, there is some sticker shock with having our full staff and a full year in the building in terms of supplies, utilities, HVAC, that sort of thing. One note on that is those are still our best guesstimates because we haven't been in the building, so to see what utility costs during a harsh winter would be like. So we'll have a much better idea going into 2021 and beyond. as to what operating costs will actually be. We are keeping most other non-building related line items pretty flat. The one difference is in programming. We're going to be doing over 400 programs for all ages this year. We intend to do over 500 next year. So big things at the library. One thing that is not on this slide, but you might want to keep on your radar, is that there is some significant interest amongst the public about looking at Sunday hours. Currently, we are not open on Sundays. So I think for the 2021 budget, we'll begin having conversations about what that would cost and what that would entail.
Very gratifying how much attendance at the library increased.
It has been, yes.
You're gonna making so much program revenues that leasing space, you guys are doing great.
I'm non-committal on that.
I think the first several months have gone very smoothly. I'll commend you on that with everything that you had to juggle in that process. Everything has gone very well, and I know of all the comments that I've heard from people have been very positive. It's a great asset to our community. I will say that people love the trail. I see that Sam's here. I've seen Sam for sure walking on that trail at times, which is great. That's what it's there for everybody to use and enjoy, and it's a great asset to our community. So thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have police. Kevin.
Just a couple of minor changes for us. 3 officers are retiring in 2020, and they're replaced, and it costs about $3,200 per officer to completely outfit a new officer. So we'll have an increase in that section. And then we have a budget line other, which has been way over for years. It's never increased, but it has been over significantly over the last 7 or 8 years. We're just looking to increase that to get it to a more reasonable level, what reflects our use of that. And then the last one, which is Renee, I had to look up this title today, the bidirectional amplifier system. That's actually a capital purchase. Right now, we are not able to use our portable radios in the police department. They don't work because of the change in the radio system through the communication center. They have not worked since then. That's caused significant issues for us over the course of time. Officers have missed calls. There have been some other incidences where people wanted to call out and get help from inside the building, and we've not been able to do that. So that system will allow us to be able to do that. And just to put that in perspective about how important this is, the new apartment building on Main Street was required to get a VDA system, and the new apartments out on Century Avenue as well. So that's so fire and police can communicate and make transmissions from inside those buildings. So pretty critical that we are able to communicate out of our own building. So.
Questions for Kevin? I have a comment. If you want, go ahead.
My only question is cameras. I mean, you hear that talk about a lot of different departments. We've never had a discussion on it. I'm not sure, Kevin, where your department is or thought of, body cameras.
We've had body cameras for several years now. Yes. And they've proven invaluable.
So I do feel that you should stand up right now, because this is the last time you get to do this, technically. One of those that is retiring.
If I don't know.
You made Brian up there.
Brian was here with his.
That's what I'm saying.
With it, so thank you. I know we'll probably recognize later, but thank you for your years of service, and always coming through with a solid budget for us, and doing such a fabulous job.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next.
Okay, next is Bill with Public Works Parks.
Okay, basically, ours is pretty straightforward for a few things. Snow and ice are increasing. We've noticed in the last couple of years, we've been experiencing more freezing rain than snow, which is requiring us to do a little more de-icer, so we've increased some of those numbers there. Equipment repairs, maintenance, just in general increase on parts. Price increase to buy equipment to fix the stuff we have has gone up, so that's why we've looked at increase there. The street end of things, we're just obviously with chip sealing and crack filling, we're hoping to do more crack filling in the coming next year with the increase in funds that we're receiving, and chip sealing as well. and, you know, and get us, continue to work, with other communities and learning what's working for them to see if it'll work for us.
Perfect. Any questions for Bill?
I mean, I think one of the things that, and a lot of the departments, I mean, Sue was talking about the programming and, you know, the library programming and the service levels that people expect in Wanakee. I mean, I think it makes us a unique community. I mean, you talk to other people who live in other communities and, you know, they pick a brush every 4 weeks. They get leaves every 2 or 3 weeks. I think our citizens expect a high level of services, and I think we need to make sure that, not only from a staffing standpoint, but I know that at least in Parks and Public Works, they've done a great job using technology to get the most they can out of the employees they have. But I think our residents want to make sure from a staffing standpoint that we stay ahead of that curve, because I don't think we want to go the other way and reduce the level of services we offer.
My only comment, or one thing I would like to see, the board would have to obviously agree with me on this, but our creek is one of our big assets flowing through the village, and there's definite need within that creek to get some things out of it for free flowage throughout the community. So that's something that we should consider. I know, Kevin, I've talked to you about this a little bit too. You know, we rip wrap some of the areas, and maybe we need to venture into those others as well. That may help with some of our water issues as well. So just some input for you for thought on that. Same for you, Sue, I guess. I guess that's probably several departments that we're gonna talk about with that, but anyway, thank you, Bill.
Okay, senior services.
Once again, we see an increase from funding from Dane County. And so next year, they'll be contributing $106,000 for our case management and nutrition program. We had 2 positions, a part-time reception desk person and a driver escort coordinator. We were having a hard time finding someone for the driver escort part of the position. So what we did is combine the 2. Rather than having 2 20-per-hour week positions, we now have 1 person who's doing it at 32 hours a week. And it was our reception desk person who took on that part of the driver escort work, and it's doing very well. It's great. We'll be looking at and finding out some options to use credit card. We do a lot of trips, programs, other services, and we still only take cash and checks. What we're finding is checkbooks are kind of going away, and so we'll be looking at being able to take payments through credit card. I think our customers would appreciate that. And then the last thing is, for the second time now, we've been left in someone's will and bequeathed money, and so we'll be establishing a Friends of the Wanakee Senior Center, a 501c3, to manage that money.
Questions for Cindy? Bill?
Oh, I'm just one of the seniors that works with her every day, and I tell you, that staff, like with all of our staff, they're just perfect. They're wonderful to work with.
Perfect. Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, a couple last ones.
We're kind of getting on top of the iceberg with our bit of strategic planning we're going to start with in November, and we're proposing to continue that work to get more deeper into a more thorough strategic planning effort in 2020 with the board. And then the municipal judge's salary has not changed since I've been here.
It's like 12 years or something.
12
It's
years.
been the same.
Easily the lowest paid municipal judge in the region. So in reviewing that situation, I'm suggesting an adjustment from $5,000 to $10,000 annually, but that wouldn't impact the current judge unless he was reelected. So we would have, if the board approves this, it would take effect with the new sitting municipal judge after election.
My only question to that is why 10,000? Is that bringing him average him or her, average to
Uh,
where we are?
Um,
or-
They had looked at comparables, and I think that even at 10,000, we'd still be low to maybe mid-range in the comparables that they had. It was not totally bringing him or her up to par. And that study was even a couple of years old. So they looked at it both on caseload and on population, and we were ranking low in both. And this still wasn't, you know, it's a step in the direction to bring them up to par.
Yeah, I did consult with Judge Nick about this, and he in looking at this globally, not for him, you know, not good for him, but more good for the position of municipal judge, he thought that was a reasonable step for the village to take. But you're right, it's probably still on the low side of mid.
Okay, so that is it for the departmental section. Next, we're gonna talk a little bit about capital improvement plan. You may recall back in June, Todd Taves from Ellers came and presented our first draft of our capital improvement plan that myself and all the department heads had been working on since about February, I believe. We started sort of accumulating what we thought the capital needs and equipment needs would be over the next 10 years. Ellers assembled all that. We went through the draft. And since that time, things have been tweaked during the budget process. We found things that maybe needed to be moved or added or deleted as people refined their budgets. And so the full plan was in your packet, and the detail by year and department and everything that is in the plan. But I just wanted to do a couple slides to highlight certainly 2020 and then even into 2021. Because if you recall, their Ellers technique is to typically, which saves on debt issuance costs, is to borrow every other year. So we would borrow in sometime in early 2020, and it would be for capital needs for 2020 and 2021. Again, borrowing every year, then you have to pay some of those fixed costs and the cost to Moody's and all of that. So their strategy is to do an every other year type of borrowing. Just to highlight what some of the items are in the capital budget, some of the funding sources there. So along the left-hand side, you have things, some of it we've talked about already: street improvements, street maintenance, trails, our equipment, things at the village center and parks. So for 2020, that's just over $3 million of capital improvements and equipment that are in the budget. However, we do have some available funding sources to offset that. We have projected some use of park impact fees for particular projects. We have our pay-as-you-go funds for both capital and equipment replacement. And then the Village Center has their own reserve, so their costs are fully funded within the Village Center fund. So that leaves, kind of what would be required to be financed by debt. And so 2020, that's about 1.3 million, and in 2021, that's about 1.5 million. Both of these numbers are lower than what we had initially seen at that June meeting, because we were able to take some items out. But on the next page, I have summarized specifically which projects would be funded by debt in the way that the plan is now. So the largest share of what would be financed by debt would be those street improvements. We've talked about that already, bringing that up to $2 million. And then in 2021, that goes down a little because we're starting or strategizing to start increasing the levy a little bit each year to get up to the $2 million. But we have to do that in somewhat of baby steps because that is such a large number to absorb into the budget. So those are the biggest shares of the borrowing, and then you'll see some various, primarily parks projects, Centennial parking lot replacement, Northridge Park Shelter are some of the other big ticket items that would need to be funded by debt. And then the final slide in this area just goes through some of the impacts. Again, this is all detailed out in the full plan. But you know, what does that mean for the property taxes? So the proposed debt is not only what we just discussed, but if you remember, we still have to do that final borrowing for the library to catch any of the final costs, and we were planning to wait till after the library, all the costs were in. So this proposed debt includes that additional borrowing. So it would increase the property taxes about $12 in 2021 and $19 in 2022. That's per 100,000 of value. And what does that mean for our debt policy? Again, we previously said we're going to be at about 35% at the end of 19. It's not going to have a dramatic impact on that debt policy. We go up a little bit, closer to 36% in 2020, but then with the predicted equalized value increases, we would go back down to closer to 32% in 2021. So again, that's just kind of a snapshot of the whole plan, but you know, I certainly can address the whole plan, but it's a pretty large and detailed document that I don't know that if, you know, I wasn't thinking we would have time to do that all tonight.
Questions for Renee?
Yeah, on page 98 of the packet, gets into a little bit of the details here. And I see in 2026 and 2028, there's a significant amount for park improvements. Is that pool, aquatic facility? Is that what we're looking at there, or?
Let's see, 2026 was the first one.
In 2028, yeah.
So 2026, I do believe, is the, where the aquatic center is.
The timing would seem to make.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's where that is currently sitting in the plan, in 2026. And then in 2028, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong, got a lot of pages here. That was a youth sports complex was put into the capital plan for 2028.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, you know, going out 10 years is somewhat challenging, and obviously every year we'll refine that, but those were some placeholders that were in there at this point.
They were just very significant
Yes.
compared to the other amounts.
Yes.
so.
Okay, any other questions for Renee? Okay.
I'd make a motion to direct staff.
Oh, got a couple more.
I appreciate and I appreciate it so much. I'm actually about to leave because my son has a choir concert, so I apologize for scooting quick. But before I do, I definitely wanted to acknowledge Renee and her team, who continue to do a real nice job with our numbers. We're fortunate to have that talent in that department, so I'm glad she and her team are here. And then certainly the management team, the department heads, and the managers within the departments, they keep this thing running, and they do it efficiently. And I'm thankful for that too. I think we all are. And then I appreciate the guidance Chris has offered both Renee and myself as we've worked to pull this together for you to review. So,
All right, thanks. Get out of here so you're not late.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks.
Okay, so I know Gary's ready to jump in, but a couple more things. So if there's any last questions, otherwise, just a couple things to keep in mind, that every $10,000 change in the levy is about 0.006 change in the tax rate. You know, once, hopefully, maybe even by the November 4th meeting, we will know what that manufacturing assessment is, so we can better solidify where the tax rate is at, for the assessed tax rate. So, the action needed tonight is simply to direct staff to publish the notice and make sure that the budget is publicly available for review. But then I just put the reminder on the bottom that we will have that extra public hearing on November 4th to solicit more feedback from the public and from you as well. So now if Gary's ready to go.
I make a motion to direct staff to publish notice as recommended by state statute that indicates the proposed budget is available for the public review and schedule the public hearing for November 18th, 2019.
Second.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg, second by Kristen Runge. Any other comments?
The only thing that I would add is, to the public for the November 4th voluntary public hearing, that's probably the best time to be getting feedback to us, because then we actually have time to still, take some action.
Research, look at everything.
Yeah, it's a little more difficult if we're hearing things on the 18th or whatever that other meeting date is.
Very good point.
Yes, that's why we added it specifically to help with that.
So I'm just gonna echo Todd's comments. Thank you to our department heads for being here tonight and giving all your feedback, providing and getting your budgets ready for us. Doing such a fantastic job of it, showing why it's needed. I think that's important for us to hear. Renee, thank you for all the work that you put into this. I know this is one of your main tasks every year, if not the main task, but this is, well done, is what I'd say. So, all right, anybody else?
Just echo the thank you to Renee.
Okay.
Just add that Waunakie's in a very strong position. I know we talk about borrowing all the time, but we are in a very strong position.
Absolutely.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, Phil. You're absolutely correct in stating that. So, all right, we have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Move to
Is it a
adjourn.
regular
Second.
Motion by Bill Random, second by Aaron Moran to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have
Make
it.
the good ones.
I need-
Wow. I had to
Do
be
you want me to send you the?
Okay.